Hello there, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well and you're having good weather, wherever you happen to be. I wanted to talk today about something that literally, well, I won't say just happened to me, but more or less I became aware of in the last 24 hours. And it was sort of like an aha. It was one of those situations in which I know the facts in the sense if I read a textbook, it says, okay, I've been there, but somehow it just sort of impacted me immediately personally, and I says, "Ooh, I know that this happens to me, so I know it happens to you." So I just wanted to talk about brain and how it can kind of lie to you somewhat, based on habits. So my story, as some of you know, I've recently had cataract surgery. I was wearing glasses for several months prior to that, but for the many years, many decades, actually, probably longer than some of you have been alive, I was wearing contact lenses, something called rigid gas permeables, the hard ones, not the soft ones that, sort of take out and lose or throw away kind of thing. And then when I've got the new lenses and I'm adjusting to them because I got a special lens to try and help me to actually see, which I'm seeing now, but I'm not quite to where I'd like to be and where the doctors want me, but we have to get me adjusted for that first, but that's beside the point. Anyway, so I've been wearing, seeing even that. I've got the lenses, they've been implanted into me, and yet I still think in terms of wearing the lenses. So it's even changed in a sense the vocabulary that I use. But I've become aware in the last couple of days, um, it's really hit me, that is, that I still behave as if I'm wearing contact lenses. Um, when I go to bed at night, I go through and I think, oh, I've got to go take my contacts out. Or I'll get up in the morning and I can see, and it's like, oh my God, I slept in my contacts. I'm thinking in terms of that something's going to happen when Penny, my dog, comes up and wants to lick my face. My first thought is, oh, she's going to lick out my contact. So I've been doing this or wearing contacts for so long that my head is still into the fact that I'm wearing contacts. This has become obviously a habit, a well ingrained habit. Okay. Such a good habit, such a well ingrained habit that my brain still thinks that I'm living that particular kind of life, that I'm still needing to take the contacts out, put the contacts in, and all that kind of stuff. Even though it's been about a month since I had the cataract surgery, my brain still has not adjusted to the fact that I no longer wear contact lenses. Makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, if any of you have, say, you broke a leg and you wore a cast for a while, and then you get used to it and you have to start to walk again. Many of you have done things like this before, but on somewhat more minor issues. But let's think about this in the longer, or not the longer necessarily frame, but from the standpoint of how the brain is taking that information. So I had a habit of longstanding, if you want to view it as well, it was a habit because it was something I was doing every day. And now it's changed, but my brain is still giving me the old information. Think about what's going on in your life and how much your brain is telling you old information that is no longer true. So, for example, your brain may be telling you, I can't read, I can't do math, I can't do this, I can't do that. And that information may no longer be true at all, period. Your brain may be still working on information that might have been true 10, 15 years ago, might have been true 3 months ago. But you're still behaving as if that information is true because you're listening to your brain when your brain tells you that you can't do this. Just in the same sense, however, that I tell myself that, oh, I've got to take my contact lens out before I go to bed because I can't sleep in my contacts because you can't sleep with rigid glass permeables. At least you're not supposed to because it can cause problems. My brain is telling me that I need to take out my lenses. My brain also knows that I have no lenses to take out, but it still gives me that statement or tells me to do something that's no longer appropriate. So the idea here is to start thinking in terms of what's going on. So which brings me to mine, which tells me, I just realized I didn't even give you the quote, but I guess the quote makes much more sense now that I've gone through this whole story. When Nathaniel Emmons, he was a New England preacher from way back when in ancient history, because he died in the 1800s. He made a comment that habit is either the best of servants or the worst of masters. So we can use our habits to do good things for us. It keeps us going through certain behaviors that are good for us to remember. For example, you don't really want to be somebody or have to be in a situation in which every time you get up in the morning, you've got to think about what you need to do first, second, third, and fourth. Don't walk into the bathroom and say, oh, gee, should I brush my teeth? How do I brush my teeth? What clothes do I wear? You don't want to have to go through all of that rigmarole every single morning. You want the habits to be able to follow through so you get those things done and smooth out your morning, basically, because you know what's going on. You want, in a sense, a drive that's a habitual drive to some degree, because you don't want to have to get up if you're going to work and driving to get to work. You don't want to have to get up and get in the driveway, get in your car and sit there and say, okay, where am I going and how do I get there? You want these things to be habits. In that case, it's a good servant for you because it's giving you the information that you need to help you get through your day and do better things at whatever you're doing, because you don't have to stop and think about every single move. Okay. Uh, for those of you who are in sports, you train so that you do well and do things by habit so that you don't have to stop and think about what's going on. So if you're getting ready to kick a ball or hit a ball or whatever it is, or swim or some such thing like that, whatever it is you're doing, the habit is going to get you to do what you need to do next, right? On the other hand, it can be the worst of masters, in which it's dictating your life to you and not, in a sense, allowing you any choice in what you do. That is, of course, unless you're aware of it and you stop to think about what's going on. Because as I said earlier, if it's dictating and saying, oh, you can't do math, you're listening to the master give you an instruction or tell you something that may no longer be true. Because if I were face to face with you, I could probably talk to you and say, look, have you ever calculated the price at a grocery store and figured out, something was 6 for one and 3 for another and 1 for whatever? If you've ever figured that out and which one was going to be the best deal, if you've ever calculated the price for a new car or a new home or some such thing like that, if you've ever calculated your gas mileage, I dare say that there are things you've done with math that you've calculated out on your own. Now, you may not use the word calculate because you don't think you're doing math, but if you've done some of these things, if you've ever had to figure out between two items what was the best price, you've done math. You've done math and you do math. You just don't think you're doing it because you're not doing it in school with a piece of paper and a pencil and getting graded on it. So when you say you can't do math, that means that you can't do anything with numbers. You couldn't add up should anybody have a checkbook and balance the checkbook anymore, you couldn't do any of that stuff. But I dare say that you probably can do more with numbers than you give yourself credit for because you don't think about it. Yet your brain is telling you you can't do math. I would challenge you, if we were face to face, and I'm doing it here, to think about that and to see whether or not you can't do math, or whether that's just something your brain's telling you that's no longer accurate and no longer viable and no longer good. I could say something like some of you might say that I can't read well. What does that mean? Does that mean something because your second or third grade teacher told you that you couldn't read well or you didn't do something well? But does that necessarily apply for now? Maybe perhaps could be you don't officially know how to read. I'm going to guess you know, or at least recognize certain words and symbols. So if you see something like, let's say, Coca-Cola, you probably understand what the words Coca-Cola are. So you do somehow know how to read, but does that mean that you can't do it at all? Probably not. You probably can if somebody sat down and showed you how to do it. You follow where I'm coming from with this now? Because if your brain is telling you you can't do, I would challenge you this week to go through and say, okay, brain, why do you say that? And let's see if that's actually true. Now, if you want to, okay, let's be reasonable. If I'm going to say I can't be 20 again, okay, I'm not going to be 20 again. There's no way I'm going to be 20 again. Absolutely no. Could I feel for a day like I was 20? Maybe. But if you're going to talk about your skills and your abilities to do things, you might want to get into a conversation with your brain and yourself and actually say, is this really true? So that many of you, especially those of you thinking about school, if you say, I can't do math, I can't write a paper, I can't read, I can't do this, I would be willing to bet that that's not really true. Your brain is giving you messages based on some really old habits that you got into a long time ago that are probably no longer true, but you're living and believing as if they are. Okay? So just think about that this week. Try and write down right now a few habits that you think you've got, or a few abilities, I guess is a better way of putting it, or disabilities maybe that you think you've got that you're telling yourself you can't do when maybe perhaps you could be. Because it might make a big change if you started to tell your brain that, or maybe your brain is wrong. And maybe it's being a really bad master and just giving you some bad information. Just in the same sense that my brain is telling me that I need to take my contact lenses out when I don't have contact lenses anymore. Does this make sense? I hope so. Um, know what your brain is telling you, and maybe we can come up with some reasons of things or something you can say that can get your brain back on track so you can actually get rid of that old habit and adopt something that's much more useful for you. Does that make sense? So have a good week. Think about this. Think about how many times your brain tells you something that's no longer true. I'd be willing to bet that you'd be surprised. So you take care, have a good week, and we will chat with you later. Bye.